Welcome back to another Post Media Ottawa Senators panel. I'm Bruce Garriock, pleased to be joined today by legendary play-by-play voice Dean Brown of TSN 1200. Good morning, Dean. And as we talk today, the Senators are coming off a 4-1 win over the Washington Capitals. They have been shorthanded. They've had some difficulty scoring, but they got one out against the Capitals. They get some good goaltending, and let's start there. Matt Murray and Anton Forsberg seem to have pulled their games together, haven't they?
Yeah, for sure. And I think the biggest thing is with Matt Murray because the implications are so much greater. He's on a longer term contract and more money and was designated to be the number one guy. So you want him to play as a number one guy. And if you look lately at the stats, at the numbers, for the last couple of weeks now, he's been the best goaltender in the NHL, which obviously Ottawa needs. They got great goaltending from Forsberg as well, and I think overall too, Bruce, they got a real good bounce back performance in Washington because they had been so bad the day before. Their
Yeah.
game against Boston the previous day was terrible, and you have to admit that at least I thought the chances of winning in Washington after the way they played against Boston. And that being the fifth game in 7 days, you would think the
Yeah.
most tired. They came out with lots of energy and really took it to Washington. So I think that's definitely a really good sign for this team that they could get themselves up off the mat. And at the base of it, again, was goaltending. Forsberg made some huge saves for them to keep them in the game until they got their legs underneath them. And again, you're right. Goaltending, I think, has been a huge part when they've had success. Put it this way: if you look at the last month when they've had success, that the foundation of that has been built on goaltending. And with a young team like this that's so injured in such key positions, you have to have that, or you really don't have a chance.
I feel like we talk about Matt Murray on this panel every week, Dean, but I, I think one of the things that happened when they sent him down was he got mad.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Bruce. I think his pride was hurt. I think he was embarrassed. A goaltender of his stature, a two-time Stanley Cup winner, to be go through waivers and to go down, and the fact that he didn't get as much playing or practice time as any of us thought. It appears that wasn't the key issue. It appears that it may well have been mostly between his ears, and he needed a reset, and he got it. And one of the things, and I realize, with the circumstances, the only people who were there to watch it live was Gordon and I, because we're in, a good position. We travel with the team. We're the only guys who travel with the team, so we get to see and be around things. And just for me personally, I don't know if Gordy agrees. We've never really talked about it, but when they were in Edmonton during the road trip, when they basically went out to play 4 games, only ended up playing 2 because the Seattle and the Vancouver games were canceled or rescheduled. They ended up practicing more than they played in that over a week in Western Canada. And that's when they instituted their new forechecking system. But as it pertains to Matt Murray, I think that was a reset for him personally, in that on the first day of practice in Edmonton, he took a hard high shot from Connor Brown that hit him in the collarbone, and it hurt him. And he went down in practice and he got back up again and he got back in the goal and he was mad. He was swearing at Connor Brown. He was swearing at himself. He swung his stick. He was angry. And instead of heading to the bench and leaving the practice like we may have seen in the past, he got back up and he stayed in there and he was mad. And he was really good in the rest of that practice. The next day in practice, Alex Formenton hits him in almost the exact same spot. And he goes down and he's mad and he's swearing, and we can hear him in the stands. And it's almost, Bruce, as if after all the things that damaged his pride in going down, and then getting dinged like that, it made him angry. And instead of that leading him to the locker room to sit on the training table and lament the injuries he's just suffered, he sucked it up. He got mad and he channeled that anger into his game. For me anyway, he has been outstanding ever since those 2 practices in Edmonton. And I don't know. Maybe there's
Yeah.
no coincidence at all. Who knows? Only he knows. But I look at those, Bruce, as exactly what you're talking about. He channeled all of the anger from all of those circumstances into his game, and I think it shows dramatically.
Well, and you look at the situation, Dean, and one of the guys I think that has to uh, improve, and look, he's only 20 years old, so I want to be careful here. Is Tim Stützle? I think has only 1 goal in his last 10 games. I think he's struggling with all the attention he gets, and I just think that's a byproduct of them not having their number one center right now. Do you think that's what's going on with him at this moment?
I think part of it, I think that's definitely part of it. I don't think there's any one thing. There's no question that he is struggling. There's no question that he's frustrated. And there's also no question that right now at times, he's not happy and he's pouting a bit. Um, you mentioned his offense and the goal production. To be frank with you, that's not the biggest issue. The biggest issue is in the defensive zone and the decisions that he is making with the puck in areas where he is too careless with the puck in really dangerous areas. And I don't think that he is enjoying some of the tough love he's getting from the coaching staff and the videos that they're having him watch. I don't think he won't like sitting there watching your mistakes, but it's what he needs. It's what he needs to get better. And he's a little bit overwhelmed right now. Guy Boucher was, when he was the head coach, he talked about young players, especially star players, and he pointed out that, their ascension to greatness is never linear. It's never going to be a straight, there's going to be dips, and Tim Stützle is in a dip right now, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Like you said, he just turned 20 years old, and with everybody else injured, he's the number one center on this team. He has to face the best centerman from all the other teams. He has to face the number one pair of defensemen on all the other teams. And yeah, he's making some really regrettable plays in his own end. But he's going to learn from that. He's going to be better. He's not going to try and stick handle through three guys 5 feet from his own net. He's not enjoying the conversations he's having with the coaching staff about that. And I think one of the reasons is that he's always been a star player at every other level, and he's been treated differently. And I'm not sure he's used to getting as much criticism from the coaches as he's getting right now. But it's what he needs. You don't learn by ignoring it, and the coaching staff knows that. And I know that Tim is not happy right now, but it's because of a whole bunch of things, and all those other things lead to him being hesitant in his offensive game. There's so many times now you see where he's got a clear shooting lane and he keeps looking for a pass. All that hesitancy and all that stuff comes from the other parts of your game not being solid, and they aren't right now. But he's, as you said, Bruce, he's just 20. He just turned 20 years old, and he's in a situation right now where they don't have the depth because of injuries to protect him. They don't have it. It would probably be better for Tim Stützle right now to go back to playing the wing for a couple of weeks and be somebody
Yeah.
else's complementary person,
Yeah.
but they can't do it. They don't have the depth to be able to do that right now. And so he's got to go through this, and he'll be better coming out the other side. And he's, it's not like he's not going to be a star player. He is, but he's very young, and this is one of the painful lessons you have to learn.
And it's interesting because when you bring up Guy Boucher, all I can think of is the baby food and the steak. But anyway, we'll move on from that. But
But it's true,
yeah, I think one of the players that I kind of wanted to talk to you about with the trade deadline coming up is Nick Paul, and we saw Nick Paul step up on Sunday after Shabbat got hit, clean hit. This is the way it goes. Now you have to fight after you make a hit. That's fine.
Yep.
But Nick Paul means a lot to this team. I don't think that. Look, we had Pierre Dorion on here a couple weeks ago. He understands Nick Paul's value to the team. He's trying to sign him. He doesn't want to overpay him. I think that's a pretty fair approach.
Yeah, I don't know what other approach Pierre can have. At the end of the day, the player's the one who decides. He's the free agent. Team can't make him sign. But I don't look at this one as being, maybe I'm naive, Bruce. Maybe I am. But I don't look at this one being a big deal. He desperately wants to stay. His fiance is from here. She works here. She works at Chio. He does not want to leave. He spends his full year here. He doesn't leave here. This is his home now. He has made it very clear he loves Ottawa, doesn't want to be anywhere else, doesn't want to play anywhere else. And now you just have to find a price. And, as long as he is reasonable about what that price is, because at the end of the day, you do have to have the cruel reality of being totally honest with yourself on both sides about what Nick Paul is today, but also what he's going to be in the future. And when this team is better, when this team in the next year or 2 years has all of its young stars ascend to where we all think they're going to be, what is Nick Paul going to be on this team? Nick Paul is going to be an important player on this team, but Nick
He's
Paul,
going to get pushed down, Dean.
yeah,
Sorry.
he's gonna,
Yeah.
he might end up being, a third line left winger. Now,
Yeah.
with his versatility, he'll always be sprinkled other places, but he may predominantly be a third line left winger on this team. So as an organization, you do have to weigh in your salary structure, you do have to weigh what any third line winger on your team, where they fit financially on your team.
Yeah.
Because, the reality is, coming out of their entry level contracts, you are going to have to re sign Tim Stutzla, and you are going to have to re sign Norris, and, Formanton's coming up this year, and, Batherson. You have some heavy contracts that are on the way, and you can't blow your brains out financially on somebody who, although you love him, is likely down the road to be a very valuable but a bottom six forward on your team for much of the time he's on the ice. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
those are the realities that every team faces. And I think though, if Nick Paul is reasonable about what he wants and understands where he is, if he thinks he's the number one left winger on this team and wants to be paid like that, then there's no deal to be had. I don't think there's a deal to be had anywhere. Lots of teams would love to have Nick Paul, but he's not going to be their first line left winger. I think that as long as there's reasonableness on both sides, I think this will get done, and I really do believe this will get done.
I do too, and I find it odd how every negotiation now is proof to the fan base that you're going to keep players. One of the things that Pierre Dorion meant when he said the rebuild was over is that the days of watching players leave is over, and he's hoping to keep this group together. And I think that Nick Paul is part of that group, Dean. And lastly, um, it's probably this is maybe overstating it, but I think the last 2 years have been a financial bloodbath for Senators owner Eugene Melnyk. Um, Very unexpected, having to play the last month with essentially no fans in the building. But good news today in that they will be at 50% capacity when the Boston Bruins come to town and the New York Rangers come to town Saturday, Sunday, and 100% capacity on March 1. Mind you, the team's on a long road trip, but the last 6 weeks of the season, they'll be at 100%. All
Yeah,
this
that's
to
a that,
say, I think, Dean, it will finally give them some home ice advantage, won't it?
you'd like to think so, and I think so, especially with a young group. They're emotional, and so any electricity, any emotion you get from the fans does translate to them. They do feel it, they do hear it, they do see it. I think, as you mentioned, the bloodbath part of it. Yeah, there's no question. I realize, in most marketplaces, there's very little, if any, sympathy for owners. They're all billionaires, so there's very little sympathy for them. But even with MLSE in Toronto, that's a huge corporation, and they can take the hit financially. But nobody enjoys. I understand for them, they lose about $2.5 million per night when there's no fans in the building. So your costs don't diminish, but your revenues do. And in the case of Eugene Melnyk, it's even more devastating. He's one guy; he's not a corporation, and it hurts. And here, if you guesstimate that, a regular season game is $1 million or $1.5 million a night, you look at all the games he's lost. His expenses haven't gone down one iota. But certainly the revenues have crumpled up. So, financially, you're right. This has been a bloodbath for both Toronto and Ottawa. But Toronto as a corporation has larger pockets than Eugene Melnyk does individually. So, yeah, this has been a bloodbath for sure. And I think one of the things that's going to be important when you do get back on March 1st to being 100% open, I think it's going to be very interesting to see, how many people come back to the rink to support this team, because they are certainly entertaining. So we'll see if that support is there coming back. And on a larger note, I think it's all a great feeling for all of us, whether you're a Senators fan or not, because all the things that we have all endured over the last 2 years, and what we've been told by medical experts and politicians that you have to do to safeguard yourself and safeguard each other, and try and make sure that our healthcare professionals aren't overwhelmed, and our hospitals and emergency rooms aren't totally swamped and overwhelmed. All the things that we've all done collectively, that there would be an end to it. So this kind of signals that there could be a realistic end to it. And I don't think there's anybody, no matter what side of the debate you're on, I don't think there's anybody that isn't happy about the fact that, we're closer to ending a lot of things that we've all had to put up with for a very long time. And so I think outside of hockey, that's a great, that makes it a great day for all of us, that a lot of those things are now going to go away.
Well, you know what? Down the road, you may have to put up with me on the road again.
Hmm.
If it's really coming to an end.
Well, I gotta tell you, as much as we miss you, Bruce, and the other reporters being with us on the road, Gordon and I have kind of really started to enjoy being the only ones out there on the road as far as the media is concerned. So we've been given a lot of leeway that we didn't used to get, you know. So I'm not so sure we're going to be so happy to see you back on the road. I'm
Yeah,
kidding, of
yeah,
course.
yeah.
We'll be happy to see
You've
you and
never
all the other
spent
members of the media back on the road.
yeah, you've never spent so much time eating your room, eating a bag of chips and
I know
watching
I
TV.
haven't. I tell you. I don't think, Bruce, if it weren't for the city, because for those who don't know, when we're on the road by and large for most of the time, we're in the same situation as the players where we're not allowed to go to restaurants for dinner and stuff like that, except there's no team dinners for us like they do for the players because we're not a part of that. So I'm pretty sure that I would never have learned how to operate Grubhub or skip the dishes had it not been for this, because I don't think there's any reasonable time I ever would have used it, but I had to learn how to use it. Otherwise, it would have been nothing but room service. So that's one benefit. I've learned how to use those apps, and probably that never would have happened if it weren't for this.
Well, we appreciate your time today. Thanks for joining us here on the Sens panel with Dean Brown. I'm Bruce Garriock.